Welcome to all. The development of children and the various perspectives that is revolving around it. It is very much interesting. No one can explain the development of a child based on one perspective. Different perspectives in child development resulted in a proper development of a child. In today's session, we are going to discuss about the bioecological perspective of child development and its educational implications. And in this session, the learning outcomes will be that to develop understanding about the bioecological perspective in child development, to classify the layers of environment that affect child's development, to examine how each layer affects the development of a child, to identify the educational implications of bioecological perspectives. Let us start with the discussion. What is the center for the developmental process? So in bioecological perspective, the center for the developmental process is the child. So there is a context for development and the child is at the center for the developmental process. Why this perspective is known as bioecological? Because from the term itself we can understand that there is the influence of biology and ecology. And this perspective, it was put forward by Brenner. And he stated that there are different layers which exert influence upon the development of a child. Or in another way, we can say that the interplay between the context and the child is taking place very much interactively. So here we can see that Brenner, who was the expounder of this bioecological perspective, stated that there are concentric circles model of human development. And in this developmental process, the child is at the center and the context of development, it radiates from the individual child's experience in proximal to distal order. And here, in the Brenner's bioecological perspective, what is important is the socialization which is taking place in various contexts. In all the socialization contexts, the child is in the center. So the socialization process takes place with the child and how it is influencing the developmental process. We can see that the child is born in a family and from the family, the influence of the child or the interaction of the child is going outside. So here in the bioecological perspective, Brenner stated about different layers. And these layers, they are related with each other. We can see the layers can be classified as microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, and macrosystem, and chronosystem. So let us have a little bit discussion on these different layers. And here, when we look at the microsystem, we know that the term micro means small. And here, the beginning of the influence of the child is the family. So the examples of microsystem, the family, the immediate neighbors, the siblings, all this comes under the microsystem. And in many cases, we can see that there may not be the parents for some cases, there will be other caregivers. So how they are influencing the child, how they are nurturing the child, that is important. So the nature will give the child the way how the child behave, it is decided by the nurturing setup. That is an important thing. So here in the microsystem, we can see that the child when born or in the womb itself, the child is imbibing the ideas of their parent, mother, especially the mother. Then when it comes out, we can see that it is influenced by the parents, the siblings, the immediate neighbors. So here, when we think of the microsystem, we can see that there are a lot of context where the child gets influenced by. There is family, there is health services, school, daycare, neighborhood play area, peers, religious institutions. So all these constitute the elements of the constituents of the microsystem. Let us take the example of the family structure. We can see that even the family structure is changing its pattern. From the traditional family, we have moved towards the non-traditional family. So from the picture itself, we can see that there is a single parent family where the father may be away in search of job, or we can say that the commuted family is there, and then there is the nuclear family structure, and then we can see there are children who are nurturing in difficult context, like the context may be the poverty, the low socioeconomic status, the war zones. So all this context exerts some kind of influence upon the developmental pattern of the child. So we cannot say that all the children that comes in the classroom are having the same experiences. The experiences are different. So here, how the child is nurtured, that is an important thing. Then the joint family system, it has gone. So we can see that nowadays there is the cohabitant family structure there, where before marriage itself the living together is starting. So all these type of family structures sometimes exert positive effects, sometimes negative effects. So these family structures has a new connotation where we have discussed the different types of family structures. And here we can see that the interaction within the microsystem typically involve personal relationships with family members, classmates, teachers, and caregivers. So how these groups or individuals interact with the children will affect how they grow. And more than that, we can see that similarly how children react to people in their microsystem. So the action as well as the reaction is important, and more nurturing and more supportive interactions and relationships will understandably foster children's improved development. So we may think that the child should get the positive environment. So for getting the positive environment within the home, take the case of the metropolitan cities where there is not enough space for the children to play, where the playground is one kind of context where the children are getting some positive experiences and some experiences where they want to avoid also. So here, within the home itself, within the four walls, what kind of experiences the child is getting, they may not be always positive if the family members are not adjusting. So here the interaction, how the action as well as the reactions, that depends upon the way the child is nurturing. Suppose the child might be playing on the playground, they might have entered into conflict or some kind of disagreement with other children, and one child beat another child. So how the other child react, whether they are going to learn about how to fight with each other, So whether that type of environment is creating. So how to react is also important in any circumstances. So next system, that is the mesosystem, where we can describe the mesosystem which contains the relationship between the microsystems. The mesosystem encompasses the interaction of the different microsystems which children find themselves in. It is in essence a system of microsystems and involves linkages between home and school, between peer group and family, and between family and community. So we can see that there are different systems, microsystems, where the relationship is taking place in the mesosystem. As discussed, take the case of the children in the playground. There the microsystems where we can see the family nurturing setup, then the peer group interactions, how the peer group is interacting, or how the community relationship is taking place. This is important in the mesosystem. So this mesosystem is also an important context where the child is coming up. That's why Uri Bronfenbrenner used the term the nested influence of the various layers of the growing up of the child is important. And next one, when we see that when a child, parent, they are actively involved in the friendship of their child. We know that children might be befriending with the different kinds of children, so that they might have inviting them to their house, where how the parents are interacting with the child. If the parents are able to interacting in a positive way, then the positive influence will be there. If the parents are disliking the friends, then the negative influence will be there. So we have seen the two layers where the interaction is taking place or the influence is taking place upon the child, that is the microsystem and the mesosystem. Coming to the next aspect in the mesosystem, we can see that the neighborhood as a context of child development. Nowadays, we have to give importance for the neighborhoods. The neighborhoods and schools are the two contexts in which children spend vast amounts of their time for making friends, forming opinions and attitudes, and learning social and academic skills that help them to lead their daily life. So here we know that in a metropolitan setup, what is having, the space is not there for the parking, children's park. So another thing, what is there, the child may be interacting with the family members and with the immediate neighbors. So how the neighborhood influence? So this neighborhood area also gives some kind of understandings about the children that are residing there. If the neighborhood area is providing good play facilities for the child or good resources for the child, there we can see the positive influences. So we will say that when we look at the friends, we can understand what type of a child is. That is the general notion that we have made up in our mind. So this neighborhood area also gives some kind of understanding about the growing up context of children in that particular area. If the neighborhood area belongs to the low socioeconomic status, there the social interaction may not be always in a positive way. There the children has to develop some kind of resilience to grow up in such socioeconomic status. So we can say that the quality and quantity of the neighborhood and the diversity that exerts in the neighborhood, it gives some kind of understanding about the recreational, social, educational, health, transport and employment services in the community. So all these things affect the developmental outcomes of the children. So the neighborhood socio-economic disadvantage has a negative impact on the growing up context of the child. And we can see that the quality of the area, the home environment, when it's a kind of colony type, what type of influence is happening is that the environmental influences may be in a negative way. So that's why we are always concentrating not only the family setup, the neighborhood is also an important factor that exerts greater influence on the development of the child. So from the neighborhood, some kind of social processes is also imbibed by the child. How to behave with the elders, how to behave with the peers, or how to behave with the immediate neighbors. All these, a kind of social process is developing among the child. And the neighborhood socio-economic composition also affect the quantity and quality of the life of the child. And in the mesosystem itself, we can see the school as a context of child development. So what the school is delivering, that is acquisition of the knowledge and skills. Then the socio-emotional development is taking place in the school environment. Then children's daily experiences at school affect their behavior, beliefs and well-being. So all these have a cumulative effect upon the growing up aspect of the children. So here we have explained about the two systems, the microsystem and the mesosystem. Then comes the exosystem. So the exosystem, it pertains to the linkages that may exist between two or more settings, one of which may not contain the developing children, but it affects them indirectly. So we can see that the exosystem, it has an indirect influence on the growing pattern of the child. Suppose when we take the case of the parents' working place, if the working conditions is not good, for example, in a particular day, the parents' experiences are bad. With that experiences, they are coming home, so that it indirectly affects the child. So the scolding may be giving upon the child. So it indirectly affects the child. So the exosystem also exerts an important influence. In the exosystem, we can see that the media, when we take media as a context of development, how it affects. There, I wish to quote American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Communications and Media, that because children have high levels of exposure, media have greater access and time to shape young people's attitudes and actions than do parents or teachers, replacing them as educators, role models, and the primary sources of information about the world and how one behaves in it. So here we can see the media as a context of development exerts positive as well as negative effects. So children in the 21st century learn and develop in the context of electronic media. Hence we call them as the digital kids. Increasing use of all kinds of media, creation and use of media designed for children aged 2 and under. So there are different kinds of the digital spaces for the kids to engage themselves. So this engagement, it may affect positively, and excessive use of the media, it affects negatively. And we know that nowadays the inactiveness of the children is increasing, sitting in front of the media and sitting for a long time, which leads the child eating too much, so that it leads to obesity. So there are some kind of negative outcomes that we can see when excessive involvement is kept apart for the media space. And media as a context of development, we can see that there are positive aspects where multitasking, in which more than one medium is used at a time, such as texting on a cell phone while watching creation, and use of media platforms such as smartphone are digital, interactive, and easily transportable. So different researchers have taken place and they have come out with the positive as well as the negative outcomes. So how do we use all these contexts? It depends upon the number of hours that we are spending and how we use each type of media space. That is becoming important. Here comes an important question, that how do media use affects children's cognitive development. Expert gamers are faster than novices at deploying attentional skills and can transfer those attentional skills to other tasks. So already I've discussed about the multitasking, which is one kind of the positive thing. And then for this multitasking, they have to divide their attention. So divided attention is becoming an important aspect, and the children learn how to divide the attention. Sometimes engaged in numerous multitasking process where we can see there the children may not be able to attend even at a single task, so that no task can be able to complete in a successful manner. That is also there. And another positive effect, that the spatial skills they are developing. The spatial skills also improve when children play video games that require visualization of spatial fields. So the majority of the games we can see what space they have to use, in which direction they have to go. So the speed, the spatial skills, then the visualization capacity of the child and the multitasking, it is increasing a lot. So we can see that though there are different contexts of development, how it exerts the influence is very much important. Then coming to the macro system, where we know that the term macro means the large. It is the largest and most distant collection of people and places to the children that still have significant influence on them. Thus, ecological system is composed of the children's cultural patterns and values, especially their dominant beliefs, ideas, economic system, political system. And in this case, for example, children in the war zone areas will experience a different kind of development than children in peaceful environment. So in this discussion, we can see that in the war zone, the children are always listening to shooting of the gun. So the terrorist attack and the stress. So it creates a different type of mood and the developmental swings in the mind of the child. Then comes the next system, that is the chrono system. So all the earlier developmental context has a time concept. So here the chrono system adds the dimension of time, which demonstrate the influence of both change and consistency and constancy in children's environment. The chrono system, it may include change in family structure, parents' employment status, as well as immense society change such as economic cycles and wars. So from the figure, you can see that the child, when they are developing, we can see that the diversity of the interrelated influences that exerts greater pressure on the development of the child. For example, the socio-economic status, when it is a good socio-economic status, it affects positively. If it is low, it affects negatively. If the parents are divorced, this will affect the developmental pattern of the child. So there is a time pattern where the achievement level of the child may be reducing, or the child may not be behaving properly at some point of or at certain age. Generally, the parents are complaining about the adolescent stage where the children are not behaving properly. So there occurs the biological changes, the mood swings, and the emotional changes. So what are the educational implications that we should highlight here based on this Bronfenbrenner's ecological perspective is that how do we prepare teachers and educational leaders to facilitate an inclusive classroom? As the today's notion is the inclusive setup. So how do we prepare teachers and educational leaders, understand the background of each learner, understand student learning needs and styles, teach new concepts by using student vocabulary, and integrate diverse study practices, culturally responsive pedagogy. The teacher plays a major role in determining the meaning and sensitivity in the classroom. So, here what type of teacher training we have to give in the diverse context? The culturally responsive training is very much important. The multicultural training, education, that type of training is important. So, we have seen the different layers of the Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model, where it consists of different systems such as microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, the macrosystem, and the chronosystem, and how each layer is influencing the child positively and negatively, and what are the educational implications of bioecological perspective in child development. Thank you.